Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 2023 horror slasher sequel, Scream 6. Now, I will just say this. After getting out of the theater, my initial impression of this film is very mixed. Now, I will admit that I liked this more than Scream 5. But then again, it's not that hard to be better than that movie. It's not a very high bar. But yeah, I would say that this is a better film than Scream 5. It's a better Scream sequel than Scream 5. It's a better slasher film than Scream 5. And there is more going for this film than what was present in Scream 5, at least to me. But I'm still not really a big fan of it. It's like one of those things where it's almost a time waster for me because of the things that I really liked about it. But then there's just so much stupidity and dumbness and laziness that's disguised as being clever that it just brings the film down. It ultimately, once again, just adds another stab wound to this franchise that is already bleeding out at this point. The film is directed by the duo of Radio Silence, who directed the last film in the series. So you've got direction by Matt Bettinelli-Olpin and Tyler Gillett. And their direction is one of the things that I thought was an improvement over Scream 5. I actually thought the direction in this was really strong. I thought they did a great job directing this movie. They did a good job working with the New York City backdrop and the setting, even though a good chunk of it wasn't even shot in New York and it was shot in Vancouver. But I still felt they did a good job showcasing different aspects of the city. And they did a good job showcasing the unique setting of the lair in the abandoned theater. And there were a lot of scenes in this film that are just really well shot when it comes to the camera techniques that are used, the the pans, the zooms, the wide shots, or the low angles and Dutch angles, and a lot of different stuff in this film that really does showcase that these two filmmakers are really talented. And I knew that they were talented from earlier films that they did prior to Scream 5 and Scream 6, like Ready or Not. And this really felt more like what they did in Ready or Not. It's almost like in Scream 5, they were told to kind of tone it back, ease back a little bit with when it comes to their style and play it more safe. And in Scream 6, they aren't really hindered with the same limitations. And it really does benefit the film. To me, one of the biggest standout scenes is the subway scene. I thought that scene was shot really well, and even the convenience store scene was shot uh, well too. It's just one of those films that, if I'm going to point out one particular element that is consistently good throughout the entire movie, it's definitely the direction from Radio Silence. Now, when it comes to an aspect of the film that is completely inconsistent and ultimately the main thing that holds this film back from being not only a good Scream sequel, but a good film, is the screenplay by James Vanderbilt and Guy Busick. Now, before I go any further talking about this script, I am going to provide a spoiler warning. In order for me to discuss the flaws and the issues that I have with this screenplay, I have to spoil things. So if you haven't seen this film yet, click away and come back to the rest of this video at another point. You have been warned. And now let's get to why I feel the script isn't as sharp and doesn't really stab as strongly as it could. Now, before I get into the flaws, though, I want to talk about the things about the script that I thought were actually clever and I thought were well done and were quite um, interesting and unique in their own way. The opening of the film, loved it. I really liked the opening of this movie. It was a fun cameo by Samara Weaving from Ready or Not, and it really did play with conventions and expectations in a way that I didn't expect. You have an opening that seems kind of typical with this cameo from Samara, and she plays a film studies professor, and she falls victim to typical horror trope stupidity and goes into a dark alley, and the killer comments on that, and she gets killed and stabbed to death by Ghostface. But then Ghostface actually reveals himself. And that was completely unexpected to me for Ghostface to take his mask off and reveal who the killer is, or at least who I thought the killer was at the time in the opening of the film. I thought that was different. And then it just keeps going with playing with conventions where the killer's talking with this other guy who was supposed to be in on it, and you think that maybe his friend is playing a game with him, but then there's another twist that there's another killer who isn't tied into their whole plan and has their own separate plan and already killed his friend and then kills him. And I thought that was really quite brilliant. That was a really great way to start the film and keep you guessing and keep you thinking and playing around with conventions. And that was clever. I will give the writers a lot of credit for that. I will also give them credit for how the killer leaves behind the different Ghostface masks from the other previous crime sprees. I thought that was interesting. That the killer is leaving behind these Ghostface masks from the previous installments in the series as calling cards, and it's all leading up to the first film and the first Ghostface. And there's this whole thing about trying to pin the crimes on Samantha because there's this rumor that started swirling around that she's the real killer, she's the real Ghostface, and Richie was innocent. And so all of that culminates within the climax of the film. And when they get to that point, that is really where they drop the ball for me. But all this stuff like leading up to it, like for the first 40 minutes of the movie, for the most part, I was actually intrigued. I was entertained. I also felt the writers did a better job handling the new characters, making them a little bit more likable, a little bit more sympathetic, especially with Samantha. I actually did feel for her when she was hated and despised because of this rumor that started spreading about her being the real killer. And I actually started to genuinely warm up to her, to Samantha, as well as some of the other characters like Tara. I actually started warm up to Tara because instead of introducing her talking about elevated horror and just having this attitude that was just obnoxious and unlikable, they didn't do that this time around. They made her a little bit more likable and personable and kind of cool, and did a better job really making me care about the two sisters as well as the other survivors from the last film. I actually thought the romance that was starting to bud between Tara and Chad, I thought that was actually sweet. And I even like like the new roommate that they had in there, Quinn. I thought they gave her some fun moments, some fun little lines of dialogue to show her personality and charisma and so on. And with Mindy, there were a few things too that I wouldn't say made me a complete, total big fan of hers, but, you know, she was a little bit more tolerable. And even the way that they handled the legacy characters, you know, like Gale and Kirby. Kirby in particular, I thought the writers did a great job with her. Gave her a lot of moments to shine and definitely did her justice. And if you're a fan of that character, they don't put her to waste. It seems like there might be a moment where they're gonna waste her character by having this twist be that she's one of the killers, but they don't actually commit to that, which I appreciated. I also appreciate the fact that they actually didn't kill Gale. She got stabbed pretty badly, but she didn't die. So the film didn't commit to that either. But it's one of those things where it starts off strong, but like once you get to like the lair and they start showcasing the lair, and Gale somehow got the key card and found out where this lair was, and the explanation is that she's just a really good reporter, then things just start to kind of slide when it comes to the quality of the script, and then it just progressively gets dumber and more frustrating as the film goes along. You have, even previous to that moment, you have the whole scene where Mindy explains the new meta aspect of the script, where instead of them talking about the different tropes and the different cliches within another sequel, they start talking about how, oh, it's a franchise now. And to me, that was such a lazy scene, because so much of that sequence was just rehashing and recycling meta aspects of other scripts in the series, and it was presented as if it was actually clever and somewhat unique. And I'm like, you do know that a franchise is just the same thing as sequels. When you are at the point now where you've talked about the meta aspects of sequels, the horror genre, the slasher film genre, the remakes, the requels, and now you're just talking about a franchise in general, you are really running out of ideas. And it's not like the film even has moments during that scene where it kind of hints at that, like, oh yeah, we're really running out of ideas here, that we're talking about, we're at this point where we are talking about the rules of a franchise. No, there isn't a moment like that where they kind of wink and nod at the camera. They just kind of throw it out there like it's clever, and they actually figured it out in terms of a new meta thing to throw in there. And no, it's not clever at all. It's just a rehash of a rehash. This approach carries over into the film's finale at the lair at the movie theater with an unbelievably dumb twist. I could not believe what I was seeing when I was watching this all unfold in the theater. It's the writers seem to think that the most obvious thing is now clever. And I'm like, bullshit. The most obvious twist is not clever, it's lazy. I'm not going to give praise to laziness. Just like I didn't give praise to the whole rules of the franchise because that was lazy. I'm not giving praise to the most obvious thing being the twist, where the cop is involved in on it, and the two killers are the two newcomers to the film, the two new roommates, Ethan and Quinn. Those are the two killers. And then the extra twist is that they are the brother and sister of Richie, Jack Quaid's character, and Jack Quaid's character in Scream 5, and the cop who's been investigating the murders, who was taken off the case, but then starts investigating Kirby, and then tells Sam and Tara that she's the killer to pull them off the trail. Detective Wayne Bailey. He's the father of Richie, and so this is all a revenge thing. And I'm like, that is lazy too, because that's just a lazy rehash of the twist, one of the twists in Scream 2. Remember? With the mother character? The mother of one of the killers? I think it was Loomis. I'm like, okay, you literally just did that again? And you're going to try to tell me that it's clever and it's unique? Bullshit! No, that's not clever. That's not unique. That's lazy. And that's just another reason why this franchise is just slowly bleeding out with each installment, with each stab. Each time they take a stab at another Scream film, it dies a little more. I mean, what the hell are they even going to do with Scream 7? They're going to have this whole thing where Samantha is going to be the killer now, and she's going to carry on the legacy of her father. That would be pretty predictable if they went that route. What might be interesting is if she becomes kind of a heroic slasher, because that hasn't been done that often, where the slasher is actually the hero. And it seemed like they're kind of leaning towards that a little bit with the ending of this movie, where she dresses up in her father's ghost face outfit and kills Wayne. But I just don't see a lot there. I don't really see a lot of potential. I don't see much of a direction that they can really go from this point. I mean, when you're just rehashing rehashes, you really are at a point creatively where you've hit a dead end. So, yeah, I couldn't believe that twist. I was like, you got to be fucking kidding me. You're going to provide me with this bullshit. Is this just another reason why they should have waited to do this movie? Is the laziness a result of the fact that this is a very quick sequel in terms of the fact that they wrote it and shot it less than a year after the release of Scream 5? I don't know. So, yeah, that's the thing about this movie. It's frustrating. It's got a good hook with how it plays with conventions when it comes to the screenplay. And initially it grabs you, but then there's all these things that just don't work for me at all. The twist, the whole meta stuff and with franchises, the whole digs at film fans again, which I find to be really annoying. Like, this is your audience. These are the people who are paying to see this movie, and you are still continuing to insult them. Like, hey, the killers this time aren't people who think having a letterbox profile is a personality. Yeah, it's just and the fact that the film fans were the killers in the beginning, and the fake out, and Richie, and how his dad is trying to make this whole tribute to him at the end of the movie with the movie playing, which I think is one of the stab films or a fan film. I think it's a fan film that Richie made. And it's not nearly as clever or as fresh as the writers or a lot of these other critics make it out to be. And at the same time, could it have really been? It's Scream 6. And that's one of the biggest problems, is that they've already done so much and there really isn't much new for them to do. You can have some new stuff, like a new setting in New York. You can have some clever things like the opening and some of the other stuff in the screenplay. And you can have some tense moments like the scene in the convenience store or the sequence with the ladder, although that scene just reminded me of Judgment Night, and that was done a lot better in that movie. But it was still serviceable. Then you got the stuff with the lair and so on and so forth. But there's only so much you can do to try to inject new life and new blood into this franchise because it's lost so much of it at this point. And I mean, even the end credits scene is lazy. It's just a quick scene, which I think was probably from the moment where Mindy is talking to her friends about the rules of a franchise, and she talks about how not every film needs an end credits scene. And that's literally all it is. It's just her saying, not every movie needs an end credit scene or a mid credit sequence. And I'm like, that was cringe. That was pure cringe. And then you have other stuff where the core four, that was cringy. The core four. What are you gonna put on rings and are you gonna conjure Captain Planet next? The core four. And if that whole thing isn't cringy enough or upsetting enough, all four of them live again and they try to act like, oh, that's so unpredictable. And I'm like, you do know that the big three have survived numerous times in other Scream films. What are you talking about? It being unpredictable. That's not that unpredictable. Like, the big three lived in Scream 4. Like, really? And at the same time, it's like the core four live, and Chad survives mortal wounds yet again, but Dewey still had to die? Why did you have to kill off Dewey in the first place and turn him into a loser and then kill him? You didn't have to do that. Period. Just makes Dewey's death even more frustrating because it's like, oh, the core four all live at the end of this movie, but Dewey's still dead. But yeah, the screenplay, it's inconsistent. There are moments of brilliance. There are moments where it's genuinely clever and interesting or fun. But then there's moments where it completely drops the ball. And it just relies too much on sheer laziness disguised as cleverness. Now, the film returns the core four. So you've got Melissa Barrera as Sam. You've got Jenna Ortega as Tara. You've got Mason Gooding as Chad. You've got Jasmin Savoy Brown as Mindy. And the four of them, performance-wise, I actually think they did a good job this time around. Like, maybe it was the writing. Maybe it was what they were given to work with. But yeah, I thought Samantha, played by Melissa Barrera, it was a huge improvement over her cardboard performance in Scream 5. And Jasmin Savoy Brown was kind of more the same. But then again, her character her character is basically Randy. You know, she's Randy's niece, so that's really what she's essentially, just Randy, but female. And for that, she's fine. Like, I think she does have some charisma and personality, which definitely does help when it comes to her character. Chad, he is what he is, but I thought he had some sweet moments with Tara, with Jenna Ortega, and I thought they actually had some good chemistry. And I did feel for him when I thought he died, but of course he didn't, because the core four got to survive. Which you know that a good chunk of them are probably going to die in Scream 7 then. So they're just delaying the inevitable. But yeah, I did like the chemistry between Mason and Jenna. And Jenna this time around, yeah, I think her having more films under her belt, her having done the show Wednesday, really does help her feel more comfortable when it comes to her acting in this. And it definitely did help that they toned down a lot of the more annoying aspects of her character from Scream 5. She's not talking about elevated horror. She's not talking about how the Babadook is my favorite horror movie. It's not doing any of that. She's just allowed to be a regular girl who's coping with the aftermath of what happened in the previous installment and trying to grow and trying to just live her life and move on from it, and also still find a way to continue to fight and be there for her sister. And yeah, I do feel the performance is a lot stronger here by Jenna Ortega. And the returning legacy characters, I mean, Courteney Cox, she was there as Gail. Not anything really that impressive, but decent enough. I really liked Hayden Panettiere. Panettiere. Probably butchered her last name. I for some reason I can't say her last name to save my life. But I really liked Hayden, and I liked her a lot in Scream 4. So it was nice to see her again, and she's a legitimate badass in this. She really is, as Kirby. Samara Weaving had a fun little cameo as the film professor Laura in the opening of the movie. You have this other girl, Annika, played by Devyn Nekoda, who is the girlfriend of Mindy. It's not anything really that special. Liana Liberato as Quinn. I really liked her. It was a bummer that she was one of the killers because I really did like the back and forth that she had with the rest of the core four. The Jack Champion as Ethan, block of wood, bland, really nothing to the guy. Although I did initially relate to him as being kind of a newcomer to a friend group throughout my life. So I did feel for him being singled out as a suspect. But other than that, like, his performance didn't really leave that much of a lasting impression for me. But I would say one of the biggest standouts, other than, of course, Roger L. Jackson, once again, just doing a chilling, just wonderful job as the voice of Ghostface, is how bad Dermot Mulroney was as Wayne Bailey. I mean, wow. Did you smoke a whole bowl of peyote before you started shooting your scenes in this movie? Uh, his performance was so embarrassing. He should have just stayed in the spirit world. It's like, stay in the spirit world, asshole. It was just so bad. It was abysmal. It was one of the worst performances I've seen in the theater in years. And it will definitely be a contender for the worst acting I've seen from an actor this year. And he's a shoo-in. He is an absolute front runner for the Razzie for his performance in this. God awful. Like, I couldn't take the majority of the finale seriously because his acting was so shitty throughout that entire scene. And honestly, throughout the entire movie. Talking about, you kill my daughter, you die. You kill my family, you die. Like, the way that he said it was just so forced. And I'm like, who the fuck do you think you are, Steven Seagal? And then the forced nature of the performance just continued, and then it just reached a just crescendo of awfulness in the finale, in the lair. It was just so bad. Like every line of dialogue, everything that came out of Dermot's mouth was shit. It was just pure shit when it comes to the quality of the performance. It was so bad. I mean, I I don't know how the radio silence guy. I don't know how the directors didn't see it. Maybe that was the point. They asked him to overact his ass off and ham it up to the extreme, but I don't know why they would want to do that because it honestly ruins the ending for me. The ending was already dumb, and the twist was already stupid, but his performance is so bad that it makes the entire finale mostly unwatchable for me. Despite it having some good kills, I mean, Tara stabs Ethan in the mouth. Wayne gets stabbed in the eye, and it's all done practical. That is one aspect of the movie that is good too, is the practical gore. And it is a very bloody movie. I mean, it is arguably the bloodiest film in the entire franchise. But that alone doesn't make it good, doesn't make it great for me. But yeah, Dermot Mulroney, like, man, what the fuck was that? Um, but yeah, I mean, other than Dermot, most of the cast actually does a pretty good job. They're pretty consistent. Yeah, Skeet Ulrich is back in this, another cameo as the ghost of Billy, and it's still kind of bad too, but not nearly as bad as Dermot Mulroney. And the film has some fine looking cinematography by Brett Jukowitz. It's decent enough. The editing by Jay Pritchidney is also serviceable. I think it's definitely at its best when it comes to the subway sequence, or the sequence in the convenience store, or the finale in the lair. That's another thing that makes the lair finale so disappointing, is like it's well shot, it's well edited, and there's a lot of cool little stuff there with the screen playing the fan film, and a lot of different touches that I did like visually. But I mean, the acting from Dermot Mulroney, and just the stupidity of everything in terms of the twist and how dumb it was, it really hurt it. It really did. The score by Brian Tyler and Sven Falconer, it was average, adequate, I guess. Definitely heard better in the franchise. Definitely heard uh, um, more intriguing or captivating music from Brian Tyler. I would say the original songs, or the songs that they chose for the soundtrack, were more memorable. There's like this, I think I don't know what the name of the song is, but it played during the scene where Chad and Tara are essentially first starting to fall for one another in Tara's bedroom. And there's this song, I think it might be called Mystery Train. Like, I thought that was a good song. And Demi Lovato's Still Alive, that plays at the end credits, is a pretty decent track. So I would say the original music that they used for the soundtrack, or choice cuts that they decided to select for the film, were bigger standouts than the score itself. And it's paced in a way where it starts off quick, it keeps and maintains your interest for like the first hour or so, but then it starts to tail off and starts to feel a little tedious, starts to feel a little slow, and it definitely did feel a little bit too long. I don't feel this needed to. Why was this 2 hours? The whole stuff with the boyfriend of Sam, like, who gives a shit about that guy? He disappears for the entire climax because he says don't trust anybody. So Sam takes his advice and then leaves him behind. So he doesn't really amount to much of anything. So really, you could have just left him out of the entire movie. They don't even try to posit him as a red herring or anything, except for the whole play it safe thing where they leave him behind because they're trying to trap the killer in the lair. But other than that, like, they don't really do much at all with that character, other than him being the love interest for Sam. So you didn't need that. That was not needed at all. And there were a few other things that, you could have probably chopped as well. The stuff with the therapist, like Dr. Christopher Stone, like, we didn't need the therapy scenes. I guess it's there to set up how the killer gets the address for Sam, but when you figure out the twist, she's already going to know where Sam lives. Both of them are going to know where Sam lives. So that was pointless too. Just another way to add an extra kill to the film. And even the kill wasn't really that great. It just stabbed in the face. It's just like, okay. And that's honestly the majority of this movie. It's just the kind of stuff where you're just like, oh, okay, that was all right, or that was bad, or that was actually good. So it really is like one of those films that is the epitome of a mixed bag for me. Like, there are things about it that are good, there are things about it that are bad, there are things about it that really suck, but there really isn't much that's consistently good or great about it other than the technical merits, the direction by Radio Silence, the cinematography, the editing, the practical makeup effects, the production and art design. That's the stuff that's consistently great and good about it. The performances, for the most part, are pretty decent, but there are some really major, huge outliers. And the script is just too inconsistent in terms of its quality to really make it a film that I could say that I'm a fan of, that I liked as a whole.